All right, folks, Vitek here from Wani, and with us today we have the mighty David Davidson of Revocation. Man, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
And great is our sin. Before we talk about it, I really want to know. I mean, you guys have been churning out quality metal albums since the beginning of your career. There's hardly been a 2 or 3 year gap between the releases, but yet your metal batteries are still charged and hungry. How are you able to do it?
I think we're just really all constantly inspired by music, and I think we're just sort of creative people in general. So, um, when I'm home in between tours, I'm constantly listening to music, constantly working on new music, practicing. So I just try to surround myself with as much music and creativity as possible, and I think it just manifests itself in our work ethic.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear because I can clearly see you guys are pretty much pumped up that this album is coming out probably 1.5 years. The last one came out Deathless in October, so that's almost like around 18 to 20 months of a gap. Now that's where the importance lies of writing songs which have a lot of value because as the time proceeds, fans really loved Deathless. I mean, I was one of them, and now with this coming out, is there any sense of nervousness as to how fans are going to perceive this? Despite being just 18 months gap from Deathless?
I'm not really nervous. I think that one of the great things about our fans is they're very open-minded and they're very sort of loyal to our vision. I think what our fans appreciate is we don't try to write music to cater to a specific scene or a popular trend that's happening at the time. We really try to write music for ourselves first and foremost because we really are our own harshest critics. I think listening to the material of the new record, if you were a fan of Deathless, there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to absolutely love the new record.
Absolutely, man. I mean, Comedian is already out and has created a buzz among the fans. I've heard a lot of opinions from people, and they're loving it, despite some being your old fans and even the new fans as well who came across Revocation, after a long time. So I'm sure you guys must have done some research as to see how they have perceived it. So how's it been the response so far?
From what I've seen, the response has been incredible. The reaction has been super positive. People are really loving the track. People have really embraced Ash as a new drummer. So I'm seeing a lot of comments on his drumming. Just all around, it seems like between critics and fans alike, people are really digging the new track. So of course, I can't wait for them to hear more of the record because that's just a little taste.
True, definitely, man. And 5 albums already in your belt, and you guys have always proved yourself in terms of writing some technical, some abrasive metal, which you guys have been unleashing. You could easily, just sit back and chill, but then again, it's a constant drive in you guys to push forward and don't compromise with the integrity because you've always known to cross the various horizons of heavy metal. You are not a specific metal band who just plays thrash, but you add a lot of death metal to it, some technical elements as well. So it would be safe to call Great Is Our Sin as probably the most dynamic album of the Revocation reported so far. Does it get difficult to top yourselves every time you write an album, keeping in mind that the previous one could probably be the best one you guys have written?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I really appreciate all the compliments, and I think that it's great when I hear that kind of stuff because usually in metal it's often kind of the opposite. It's like, oh, their first album was great, or like, oh, their demos were great, and they lost after that. So what I hear time and time again is like, from critics and from fans, like you keep getting better with every release. So that's really great to know that we're evolving and we're developing our sound. I think part of the key is it's not like we're setting out to be like, oh, we have to be like more extreme than the last record, or we have to be more technical than the last record. What we think about is, we just have to bring something new to the table, and just how we are as musicians, we're constantly working on our craft and developing our skills. So anytime we go to write a new batch of songs, we're that much more honed into the Revocation aesthetic,
Right.
I think, than on previous records. So I think you can kind of see, going back with, basically all the way back to maybe our EP, the Teratogenesis EP. I think we sort of started focusing our sound a little bit more on that record, and it's been getting honed in more and more ever since. That being said, yeah, we work really hard to bring in some different elements to the table. We want to have it be more dynamic than before. But all of it, it comes very naturally for us. It's not something like, we have to have this type of song or that type of song. It just sort of develops naturally on its own.
Absolutely, man. And now with Ash joining, I mean, you've been, Phil, we know, has been devastating in terms of all the songs, he's been part of. So when you were writing the album and Ash had joined the band, so what was it sort of the thought process about how you're going to write the parts? Because maybe, you are yet to explore how Ash is gonna churn out, bring in his creativity as compared to being already well settled with Phil writing his drum parts while in studio.
Well, when we had a little bit of we got to tour with Ash before he was in the band officially, because he was filling in for us. So we really sort of experienced what he could do behind the kit. And seeing him execute our songs night after night on tour flawlessly, I knew that we were working with an incredibly skilled drummer. So when he actually ended up getting the gig, after Phil and us parted ways, I never had any kind of I knew I didn't have to sort of alter my writing style with Ash. I mean, if anything, Ash was only going to further complement our already established sound, because he can play with power. He plays with aggression. He can be really, really fast and technical when he wants to be. But he also has a lot of other elements to his playing. I mean, one of his favorite bands of all time is Frank Zappa. Oh. So he's constantly listening to like weird, kind of out there, avant-garde, like sort of fusion drumming and stuff like that. So he brings a lot of those elements to the table, and I think you can hear in certain sections. It's not like, oh, here's a metal drummer trying to play a different kind of beat where he's like a little out of his depth. I mean, he really feels extremely comfortable playing in a lot of different styles of music. So when we kind of explore different possibilities sonically, I mean, he's right there with us, laying down a really, really convincing beat to kind of support the backbone of the whole skeleton of the song.
Absolutely, man. And I got to give credit to Zeuss as well. I mean, I love his work with Sanctuary, even the Queensryche, which came out last year, and then the recently released Hatebreed as well. And how he brings the organic feel of your sound. I've seen you live once, so that was there in my mind when I was listening to the album, and see how he has made sure that the organic aspect of Revocation is still there. I mean, you have worked with him on Deathless, you've worked with him even on the EP as well. So the way he has managed is really great. I mean, tracks like Monolithic Ignorance or even Crumbling Imperium have some of the meatiest bass lines by Brett, which I can clearly hear, along with your insane solos and riffs. So good to hear how each instrument puts a mark on the song and are clearly audible and together as a beast make an impact.
Yeah. I mean, Zeuss is sort of similar to us in that regard, where he wants to sort of outdo himself with every record, and we all love the production on Deathless, and when we were getting together with Zeuss, it was like, all right, he was right there with us. He's like, let's make this sound even better than Deathless. So he takes a lot of pride in his craft, and that's why it's so great to work with him.
Absolutely, man. And what about the lyrical approach this time? Every time I look at the artwork, it conveys a lot of meaning. I mean, there are a lot of worms I see on the cover art, certain structures, and is it like about what's happening with the current society? Because a song like Cleaving the Ice Giants, I kind of feel is more about the climate change.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yes. So how is the overall aspect of the lyrics and the idea which you had in your mind while writing the songs and the lyrics?
Sure. So this record is sort of I'll kind of answer both those questions. I'll kind of tie in the artwork as well, because I'm glad you brought that up. But just specifically speaking about the lyrics, this is sort of our first like concept record. So the whole album is basically about the folly of man throughout history, right? So the title was appropriated from a Charles Darwin quote that basically says, "If the misery of the poor be caused not by evolution but by our own institutions, then great is our sin," right? So that quote really resonated with me, as especially the last part. So I was just sort of looking at humanity, across history, and how we've sort of succumbed to madness and really have gone astray, so many times. And I've heard it said that history, it sort of it repeats itself, right? But it's sort of the same story over and over again with different costumes. So I took a look back at like something like the impasse of religion and science at the time of like Copernicus and Galileo, right? How they had a heliocentric view of the solar system, and that was going against the beliefs of the Catholic Church, and they were persecuted for their beliefs, so they couldn't. Eventually, obviously, they came around, and we all know, obviously, the sun is the center of the solar system. But in that time, it was scientific discovery was impeded from the religious right coming in and preventing those things, and even to some extent, someone like a philosopher like Giordano Bruno, who was actually burnt alive at the stake because of his views on philosophy and how they were sort of going against what the Catholic Church believed at the time. Then you look at something like theater of horror, which is going back into history again with the that's a song that discusses public executions in medieval times. So that would be like it was a way to sort of shock and also entertain the populace at the time, sort of shocking people into submission, but also giving them some weird, macabre form of entertainment. And then it goes all the way up until present day, right, with songs like Cleaving Giants of Ice, which is talking about sort of pollution and then the climate,
changing climate,
as well as a more political based song like something like Only the Spineless Survive, which is very much a skewering of the political system. I mean, it's not just unique to the United States. Obviously, I think there's corruption worldwide across all governments. That was actually another title that I appropriated from a quote from a book I was reading at the time. The book was called The Rich and the Rest of Us, a Poverty Manifesto. It's written by Cornel West and Tavis Smiley, and it basically says that there's no real hope for change in the political system, because by the time you already step through the door, right, by the time you already get a seat in Congress or in the Senate or whatever, it's like you're already bought and sold, right? You're already so beholden to your donors, to lobbyists, to corporate influence that just allowed you to raise enough money to get to that point. So there's really no hope for change in that system. And you said that system fosters an environment where only the spineless survive. So I thought that was such a poetic quote, and I knew I had to do something with that. It really just sort of jumped off the page when I read it. Now, how that ties in with the artwork is just sort of the brilliance of Tom Straub. I told Tom is the artist that did the whole piece. I told him like we're going to do a concept record, and hey, it would be great if we could actually do a triptych, so it's not just sort of one cover, but if it's a fold out, so there's 3 panels that kind of tie in completely with all the different lyrical themes. So I actually gave him the lyrics and song titles that I was working on, and he sort of incorporated all this different imagery from the lyrics and from the titles into the artwork itself. So I feel like Great Is Our Sin, in addition to being our best sort of musical contribution to date, I think as an entire artistic statement, it really it is my favorite thing that we've done.
That's good, man. There's a lot of work that's gone inside this, and also, the way you guys have written your songs. There's a lot of prog elements in your song. That's something which I really love. I always wondered that which ones, I mean, which prog bands out there, be it legends or even the new ones, have influenced you to incorporate such elements in your composition.
Sure. Well, I've always loved when progressive music meets death metal, right? So I mean, if looking back on bands like Martyr, or with the prog and like thrash, or the band like Voivod, they have a core element firmly rooted in metal, but then there's that progressive touch to the music that sets them apart. As far as like more sort of like instrumental, like progressive metal bands, there's that what are they called? I'm blanking on the name right now.
From
Exvius.
Exvius, yeah, the Dutch band.
Exactly, yeah, they're a really, really incredible prog band. I mean, even going into some bands that are like a band like like Animals as Leaders. They're really cool. They're sort of really doing their own thing. And then like different progressive like rock bands. Like there's like a band out of Finland called Circle who are really, really cool. They're not super like flashy or anything, but every record kind of sounds unique, and they play around with some different elements. They do a lot of like weird like loops and stuff. So I'm not sure how directly influential that is to like Revocation, but it's I still really appreciate their music, and enjoy listening to some of their stuff. They've got some they've got a whole large discography of stuff. So I'm kind of barely scratched the surface with them, but the few records that I've heard of them, I really dig. So there's so much great music out there, and that coupled with like a jazz influence, and then I'm also really influenced by classical music. So I kind of listen to a little bit of everything, and hopefully it all just sort of gets filtered in through my psyche or whatever, and comes out the other end.
Now, you also have Marty Friedman, playing a solo on the album. So must have been very special to have, him churning out his stuff on your riff. So while you were writing the song, was it already in your mind that this gotta have Marty's solo on it?
Yeah, I mean that was definitely in the back of my mind. Like I wanted him on one of the tracks. I guessed it on his album on Inferno, and had such a great experience working with him. So I thought it would be cool to have him guest on our record. And Marty's such a great player that he can kind of fit and adapt to any sort of band setting, and the solo that he lays down on that song, I think, fits perfectly with the mood and aesthetic of that piece. And that just speaks volumes about Marty as a player.
Absolutely, man. Is there any other guitar player who has inspired you, whom you wish to collaborate with, maybe in future through some of the Revocation songs, or maybe a different project altogether?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I in terms of the metal realm, I'd love to collaborate with a guitar player like Dan Mongrain. I'd love to collaborate with Luke LeMay from Gorguts. Those would be like my two big ones that I would really, really love to collaborate with.
Awesome, man. It's good to hear. Any tours planned for Revocation to unleash the new album? Because I really want to hear these songs live. I'm sure they're going to sound like extremely good the moment you guys are on stage.
Well, we're going to be hitting the road on Summer Slaughter coming up pretty soon.
Oh, yes.
That'll be the U.S. tour. And then after that, hopefully we'll be hitting Europe sometime in, October, November, still working out some details for that. So we're gonna have a pretty busy
year ahead.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Good to hear. And any other tour planned, maybe towards Australia or some parts of the Asia, Japan or something?
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff usually tends to start to trickle in, like, once the record already comes out. So once it sort of spreads worldwide, that's when we start to sort of see interest from these different promoters and different, booking agencies around the world. So, yeah, I mean, if Deathless was any indication, we'll definitely have a busy year coming up because, I mean, we went everywhere on that record. So I'm hoping to do that and more.
Awesome. That's good to hear, dude. It was a great having a chat with you. Before we conclude, how about you describe the sound of Great is Our Sin in just one sentence?
Whew, that's going to be a doozy. Sound of Great is Our Sin in one sentence. It's dynamic, it's forward thinking, and it maintains the core elements of our sound while also pushing our boundaries at the same time.
Awesome, man. Good to hear that, dude. Thanks a lot for the chat. Good luck with the release. We still have like a month and a half. I mean, I'm sure it must be itching you. When will the release come out and fans get to hear it?
I know. We finished this record up so long ago, and it's like, all right, hurry up. All right, now you gotta wait. So that's just the name of the game with the biz.
Indeed, man. Thanks a lot. You have a wonderful day ahead. I'll catch you on the road sometime soon.
All right, you as well, man. Thank you so much.
Take care, brother. Bye-bye.